Hey guys, welcome to the third part of my Paleo Essentials kitchen series. This is part 3, what's in my fridge. So I've already covered what's in my kitchen and what's in my pantry, and today we're going to be looking at all the stuff that's in my fridge that helps me stay on the paleo diet and eat clean. Now, as you guys know, the paleo diet includes no dairy, no grains, and no sugar. It's clean eating at its finest. And unfortunately, my fridge is not the perfect story of that, but I'll explain more about that once we start looking at it. So let's get into it. Hey guys, so I'm going to go handheld for this video so that we can kind of get through everything relatively quickly and easily, and you'll be able to see everything that I'm pointing at. This is the top shelf of my fridge, and as you can probably see, there are a few unusual things in here already. On the left there is sauerkraut, and it's made with cabbage and also with carrot. And basically what happens is they put a whole lot of grated up carrot and cabbage inside the bottle, and then they add some good probiotic bacteria. And it's really great on top of meat, like roast meats or grilled meats and that sort of thing, and it's amazing. It's really tasty and salty and wonderful, and it's a really good probiotic as well. So it's a great dairy-free probiotic if you've been having like yogurt as your main source of probiotic and now you don't want to have dairy anymore. It's a great alternative. So that's it there. Next to it is kombucha, which is also a probiotic. It is a probiotic drink that has got it's made from tea and sugar, I think, and then they put good bacteria inside of it, and it makes like a fizzy drink. You can see there's bubbles on the top of it. It's kind of like drinking soda, but not quite the same. I also have some fruit juice here, and that's made from 100% fruit juice, obviously. I try not to drink way too much of it, but it's really good to have on hand sometimes, especially if you're a little bit hungry and you just want a bit of a sugar kick or something. And especially if you're just starting out on paleo, it's great to have some fruit juice around. This is fresh fruit juice, like it's not heat treated. It is in the refrigerator at the supermarket. It's not anywhere else in the supermarket because it would go off if it was anywhere else. So it's really good to have fresh fruit juice. In here, in this Tupperware container here, I just have leftover almond meal from some of my almond milk making, and I throw that into smoothies and that sort of thing. And down the back, this is my loose leaf fruit tisane. It's a type of tea, and if I press down on that, you'll see the tea leaves inside of it. And I keep that in the fridge. It's just basically a cold, fruity drink. I'm going to make a video on tea, and you'll learn all about what this is and how to make it yourself. It's really tasty and a really good alternative to juice as well. Down the back I have some green tomato chutney, which a friend of mine made, and you can see apples, tomatoes, onions, chilies, ginger, apple cider vinegar, honey, salt, and sultanas. Yum! And also some cod liver oil. Now, I was taking this brand of cod liver oil, but it has a whole lot of crap in it, including soy products, and so I've stopped taking it, and I'll show you what I'm taking instead, but it's still in the fridge because I haven't quite finished it yet. And here is some old-fashioned chili sauce from Korea. In this drawer here, I have coconut cream, and I use it in most of my, when I drink tea, like hot tea, I use this as my creamer. I also have some leafy greens, that's red Russian kale, and then back here I have a salad leaf mix. And then here is some eggs, and they're farm fresh eggs from a friend of mine that I buy, and they're fantastic, really nice, and it's so important to get fresh farm eggs and not the battery hen type eggs. And at the bottom here I have a giant zucchini, which I'm going to be making probably zucchini pizza or zucchini pasta out of. I love getting the giant ones. Look at the size of it, it takes up my whole fridge. My fridge isn't huge, by the way, you can probably see. And then in the bottom here I just have some lettuce and tomatoes and some squash and cucumber and eggplant and some capsicums. Yum! Okay, so going over to the fridge door section, I have 2 pure organic milks. I am trying to stop dairy, however, other members of my household do not believe that dairy stopping is necessary. So there is still milk in the fridge, and it is seriously my downfall. I wish I could get rid of it, because then I wouldn't cheat so much, but there you go. I also have, this is the cod liver oil that I'm now taking. I know that taking fermented cod liver oil is better than taking this kind of cod liver oil for vitamin D and for vitamin A, but this is the one that I can get in where I live at the moment, and it's really hard to find really healthy and unusual foods like this, so I'm doing well to have just found this, obviously. And then here I have a bottle of water, and I like to keep cold water, especially in summer like it is at the moment. I have some sweet chili jam, some Tabasco sauce, my date spread, and a few other chili pastes. That one there is a homemade chili one, and then some more sweet chili jam and some mint sauce. And then up top I have some eggs. Yay! And then I also have some butter for cooking. Now I try and get farm fresh and Australian butter, and I try and get organic as well, but it's really difficult. This is a Tasmanian butter. It's not organic, but it's in the process of becoming an organic one, so it's as good as I can find at my local food place. So that's everything inside my fridge, and I think I'm going to pull out the stuff in my freezer because I don't really want to sit in front of my freezer, and I'll show you everything else that's in that. So I'll be right back. As for my freezer, I like to keep ice cubes inside of my freezer at all times. They're great for smoothies, and also if anyone's hurt themselves, they're really great to just put into a tea towel and put on whatever they've bruised or injured. I consume a lot of this, and that's because I like having really cold drinks and I like having really cold teas, and so I find that having ice cubes on hand, and especially for throwing into smoothies, is fantastic. I've also got some lamb chops. I eat a fair bit of meat, and this is what's in my freezer at the moment. I will probably have this for dinner tomorrow night, or maybe the night after that. I keep meat in my freezer rather than in my fridge because I don't like the idea of them going off. If I've bought it that day and I'm going to have it for dinner that night, then I'll keep it in my fridge, but otherwise it definitely goes into my freezer. I also have some chicken liver, which is frozen into a Ziploc bag. I had twice the amount, but I've already made a batch of chicken liver pate and consumed it, and this is for next batch. I also have some lamb liver in my freezer, which just pretty much looks the same but larger. I keep my mixed berries frozen in my freezer as well. I find that the frozen berries are definitely cheaper than the fresh berries, and once they go into a smoothie it all tastes the same anyway, and it adds an extra level of icy freshness to your smoothies when you use berries. I keep some coffee in my freezer as well, and that's because I don't really drink coffee, and it keeps it nice and fresh for when guests come over and they want coffee. And I also keep stock in my freezer. Now I freeze stock in little containers like this. I make them myself from bones, which I'll show you in a minute. I've got some bones in my freezer, and I freeze them into little trays like so, and then when I want some I can just boil up a cup of water or a bowl of water or something and just sit that in the bowl of water. It'll melt around the outside and I can just toss it straight into my food. I find that doing one serving sized freezing batches of stock is definitely the easiest way to go when you're cooking, because you can just defrost one dose's worth and you don't need to worry about the rest of it when you're going to eat it, and so on and so forth. So it's really good to do that with chicken stock. I've also got this Tupperware container which is filled with bones from various meals and that sort of thing. That will eventually go in to make stock. And then I also have a massive bag of bones here as well, which I got from the butcher. And these are being frozen away in my freezer, ready for when I next make lamb stock, because these are lamb bones. And they were actually marked down as pet bones. And I asked the butcher, you know, are they clean and fresh enough to use in stocks and for human consumption? And he was like, yeah, I've just basically boned the cuts of meat off of these bones, and then this is what's left over. This is the stuff that people don't want. And it's literally just like leftover bits of gross, like sinewy parts, but that's the best stuff, chicken stock, and for lamb stock and any other kind of stock, because that's got the cartilage in it, and it's got all those really good nutritious parts of the animal inside the bone marrow and all that sort of thing. So if you need to get some bones for stock making and you don't really have enough from meals that you've had lately, especially when you're having stuff like the lamb chops where the only bone is just this little round one here, it's good to be able to buy extra pet bones and that sort of thing for making stocks with. So I always have a stash of bones in my freezer, and it sometimes looks a little bit creepy if there's like big turkey legs and that sort of thing, but I cut them all up and I use them for stock making. And stocks are so nutritious and good for you. I will be posting up a recipe on how to make stock, and it's just fantastic, and you end up with these cool little frozen packs of stock, and your entire freezer will be completely filled with them, and you will think that you are a very, very good housewife or house husband and that you've done a fantastic job. So yeah, that's everything that's in my freezer. So that's basically what's in my fridge and what's in my freezer. My fridge and freezer are both really small, and I find that that's really good to keep things fresh and to keep things healthy. When you're on the paleo diet, you're not really supposed to have any foods with a lot of sugar or preservatives in them. And so all of the ingredients that are in my fridge are relatively fresh and won't keep for a very long time, which means that I can have a small fridge. With larger fridges, I tend to find that all the stuff that I don't eat regularly or that isn't being finished off is pushed to the back of the fridge and forgotten until it turns into a disgusting moldy mess. Or even worse, it's pushed to the back of the fridge and then found 6 months later, and because the preservatives are so strong in it, it looks fine and you eat it anyway, even though what you're eating is essentially just the idea of food rather than real food. It's so rancid and off. I think that having a smaller fridge and having less stuff in your fridge and not using it as a long-term storage solution for food is a really good idea when you're on the paleo diet. What you want to do is keep your ingredients fresh. Go shopping at least twice a week and pick the freshest and most local ingredients that you can afford. See you in the next video, guys, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye. Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of what's going to be a 3-part series called Paleo Kitchen Essentials. This is part 2, what's in my pantry. The little clip you just saw was basically the shelves of my pantry, and although they look really disorganized, there's definitely an underlying order to them. I put the most primal and most paleo ingredients that I have in the house in the easiest to reach location, the middle and just above and below. And then I put the less favorable food types that I still have a little bit of, whether it be for entertaining guests or other people in my house that still eat them or whatever, at the bottom and at the top of the pantry. I find that this way when I open the pantry, the first things that I see are the things that I want to be eating, and I'm not so tempted by having, you know, a giant bowl of lollies right in front of my face. That kind of thing would be down on the bottom shelf. So what I'm going to do today is just go through each shelf and what's in it, and all of the things that I think are essential for primal or paleo kitchens, and the kind of stuff that I use them for, because a lot of this is just raw ingredients that I cook with. So let's get started. Right, so my bottom shelf I'm not going to go into super detail about, because as you can probably see by the number of packaged items on this shelf, they are not primal or paleo in the slightest. So this next shelf is more of the same sort of thing. A lot of this is slightly less evil than the bottom shelf, but not by a whole lot. So now that we're moving on from the less desirable shelves, I figured that I would go through each item one by one and show you guys the absolute essentials for any primal or paleo kitchen. Now my main 3 shelves that I keep this kind of food on is this one, this one, and this one. And as you can see, when I stand in front of it, it's pretty much the first thing I'm going to see. And it's the bottom shelves and the very top shelves I'm not even going to notice. So this is where I keep the best of my food and the most primal and nutritious food that I have. So I've taken out this shelf, and I'll start with it, I guess. So I have my giant almond meal, which you guys have seen before. I go through this pretty quick, and it's important not to keep it for too long because it does tend to go rancid in the fridge, and you don't want to be eating rancid almond meals or any kind of natural fats that have gone rancid, because they will cause inflammation in your body. So I have a giant one, but that's because I go through this stuff pretty quickly. Most people, you would only have just a small bag, and try and air seal it to keep the rancidity process, rancidification, from happening too quickly. I have sunflower seeds as well. They're pretty good. I like to chuck them into any like breakfast muesli, or sometimes I put them in salads. I try and keep some kind of seed on hand at all times, and at the moment it's sunflower seeds. And the next thing that I have in this shelf is honey. This is bulk honey that I buy by I think it's by the kilo. Yeah. And then I also have local honey. Now the difference between the bulk honey and the local honey that I have is the local honey is made from pollen and flowers and things that are in my local area. If I'm having any pollen allergies, then it's great to have local honey because that will fortify and immunify? I'm really struggling with words today. It will make you immune to allergies, or at least help you a little bit. I also have raw honey over here. I have a whole lot of honey, and I use every different thing I use for something different. This is great in smoothies, raw honey, whereas the bulk stuff I can just use in cooking. Also, the bulk stuff has a very different flavour to this raw organic honey and this local honey. These are made from eucalyptus and like gum trees and just Australian bush honey, whereas this is orchard honey. So it's got a much more like flowery, fruity kind of flavour, whereas these guys are like the hardcore, sugary, sweet honeys. And then I have some tin food. I try not to eat too much tin food, but it's just handy sometimes to have stuff like tomato paste and peach slices or some kind of tin fruit for in case you run out of your fresh fruit. I have gluten-free baking powder, which is great for making paleo baking things, because obviously you don't use self-raising flour. It's great to have something like this on hand for baking with. Next, I have apple cider vinegar, which I use in salads as a salad dressing with olive oil. This is certified A-grade apple cider vinegar, and it is beautiful. It alkalizes your body. I know a lot of people that are like real fitness freaks will just do a shot of this after they've exercised, and apparently it's really good for you in that way. I've also mixed this with maple syrup in the past, like maple syrup, apple cider vinegar, and then water, and that's like quite a nice little drink. It's got a sweet and sour kind of flavour to it, I guess. So it's quite good too. Then I have my coconut oils. I have two types of coconut oil. The first is this one. It's also called coconut butter. It's virgin, cold pressed and unrefined organic coconut butter. And then I have this kind of coconut butter slash oil. And this one is just virgin slash expeller pressed organic. So this one tastes like coconuts. When you cook with it, you will taste the coconut. If you mix it in with something, if you have it in a smoothie, you will taste the coconutiness inside of it. Whereas this one does not. It's just like cooking with olive oil or any other kind of flavorless oil. So I like to have both so that I can use whatever I need whenever I need. So those are my oils. Flax meal. It's really good for inside smoothies and with a lot of paleo baking. I use it not as much as the almond meal, definitely, and that's why I've got it in a resealable pack. And this is Australian organic flax meal. Then I have some fresh nuts, walnuts, and almonds. I'm almost out of almonds. Again, I try not to buy too much so that I eat them and so that they're fresh. And then I have some fish sauce. This is premium quality Vietnamese style fish sauce, and you can use it as a dipping sauce or in Asian cooking. The ingredients are anchovy extract, salt and water, and that's it. And it's really, really good for that umami flavour that a lot of dishes call for in Asian cooking. And finally on this shelf I have my berry nut boost mix, which I use a lot of the time for breakfast, and I'll show you the recipe for the breakfast that I make with this stuff at some point in the near future. But the ingredients in this are simply almonds, sultanas, walnuts, goji berries, blueberries. Now the blueberries and the sultanas have both got sunflower oil to stop them from going like gross because they're not completely dried, and there's also a little bit of sugar in on the blueberries. This annoys me, and I wish I could find something that didn't have this kind of stuff mixed in with it. I know you can get sultanas by themselves and they're just dried grapes, but I haven't found a boost mix like this where, you know, I can use them in the morning and just kind of chuck it in without having to pre-mix it myself. So this is what I have at the moment. So that's that shelf, all done. Now this shelf here is entirely loose leaf tea. And I think what I'm going to have to do is, because there's so much on this shelf, is I'm going to have to do a tea video for you guys, because tea is kind of one of my passions and it's my favourite beverage in the whole world, and I love tea. So I think that the best thing for me to do is, instead of quickly going through everything here now, is to do an everything you need to know about tea, and I'll post it up and you guys can realise the extent of my insanity. So let's get on to the next shelf. Now this shelf is slightly less populated than this shelf here because it's sort of above eye level. Of course I've got the tea at eye level. So I'm just going to go through what's in it. Coconut milk. Again, it's in a tin, and I do worry about the BPA, you know, evilness of the tinned food, but I can't find coconut milk where I live that isn't in a tin, so this is what I use. and I have another one going at the moment in the fridge, and when I get to part 3 of this video I'll show you my fridge and you'll see it in there. But yes, so I have coconut milk. Okay, this is my olive oil. I like to buy Australian extra virgin olive oil, and I like to make sure that it says on the ingredients 100% Australian extra virgin olive oil. I buy Australian because I live in Australia and it's going to be fresher if I buy it locally. If you live in another country, buy your own country's local olive oil, unless olives don't grow in your country, in which case try and get as close as you can and as fresh as you can. This olive oil has a very robust flavour, and I really like that in my cooking. I generally just use this in salads, although I will sometimes saute on low heat some stuff, but I generally use the solid coconut oil for cooking and then this for salads. Make sure that your olive oils have not been cut with things like canola oil. When you buy them, you want 100% olive oil because that's the healthiest for you. I also have some tuna here. The tuna that I buy is, I don't always buy this brand, but this brand is just in spring water. And it is absolute 99% fat-free, dolphin safe, drift net free, local tuna. Responsibly fished. And I don't know, I can just buy this at the supermarket, but I try not to buy the ones that are in oil, because even if they're with olive oil, you'll often find that they're not with just olive oil, they will be with sunflower oil or canola oil or another one of those factory fats that we like to avoid. So I just buy them in spring water. That means there's no extra salt in them, it's just tuna and water in a tin. And really, you don't need salt in these things, the tin does the preserving for you. So the salt is completely unnecessary. I have some maple syrup as well. If you live in Australia, get the most expensive maple syrup you can find, because the cheapest stuff is imitation maple syrup. If you live in the Northern Hemisphere, try and get the cheaper maple syrup, which is B-grade maple syrup, which has more minerals in it. In Australia, you can't really get B-grade maple syrup. I've never seen it on the shelves in my life. I've only ever seen the A-grade maple syrup, and that is because it's not worth exporting A-grade maple syrup all the way from Canada to Australia. But if you live in Canada or the US, you will be able to get B-grade maple syrup, which is better for you. So try and get the B-grade and not the A-grade, which should be cheaper for you guys too. I have more honey. This is ironbark honey, this is eucalypt honey. I tend to have a whole lot going at once, you may have noticed. Coconut cream. I use this for cooking, and I also use it in tea. I generally try and avoid using milk in my tea because it's not primal, not paleo, and I find that coconut cream actually does a better job than the coconut milk. It lasts longer, and you only need sort of a small amount to make it nice and rich and creamy. And in that amount of heat, with a hot tea obviously, when you put the coconut cream inside of it, it just melts away and you actually get a nice even kind of creaminess to the tea, and I really like that. Avoid using this in smoothies. Always use your coconut milk in smoothies, and I think it's because the coconut cream is so much fattier, it kind of flocculates in the smoothie, and you end up with like balls of chewy, disgusting coconuttiness that you don't want in your smoothie at all. Macadamia nuts. So macadamia nuts, almonds and walnuts are probably my 3 favourite nuts, and I always have them on hand. This is coconut flour. I use this in a lot of baking and a lot of cooking. I make meatballs with these. It's really, really nice. Coconut flour is great. Sometimes I have desiccated coconut, but not today as well. Seaweed. This is fantastic. If you are using fancy sea salts like I do, you won't be getting enough iodine. Seaweed has that iodine in it. You can mix this, especially into Asian dishes where you're using the fish sauce. This goes really well as well. Or otherwise, if you have miso, which I do very occasionally even though it contains soy in it, it goes really well in miso. And it's more important to have iodine than to not have soy. So make sure you get this and you put it in some of your food. Obviously, if you're having iodized table salt, then you don't need to worry about it, but for some reason I just keep buying the fancy pink salts or whatever, and so it's important to have this as well. Down the back here is a whole lot of stuff. I don't use that often. I have whole honeycomb, which is pretty tasty. You can actually chew on the honeycomb and you end up with kind of a ball of beeswax in your mouth when you finish on it. And it's really, really nice actually. And this is local as well, so it's good for allergies. I have cacao powder. This is the raw cacao powder. And I'm actually finding that this isn't as nice as the Dutch processed stuff. And that is because when you put this in a smoothie, it feels like it's still like a little bit grainy. It doesn't completely dissolve. And also there's a chocolate kind of sauce that I make. And it's not quite as nice with the raw stuff. So this is almost finished and I think I'm going to get the Dutch processed again. But apparently this is better for you, so... in here I have a tiny bit of walnut meal. There's not much left though. And vanilla essence, which I use in a lot of paleo baking. If you're wondering what's in my top shelf, I'm an Australian, so it's just got alcohol in it. I'm going to do a separate video on alcohol and on the consumption of alcohol when you're on the paleo diet. Whether it's a good idea and the kinds of alcohol that are the best and worst when you're on the paleo diet. For now, that's all I really have to show you guys. That's what's in my pantry. So make sure you subscribe and then you'll get to see the rest of my paleo kitchen and also some awesome recipes and that sort of thing. See you in the next video. Bye. Hi guys, and welcome to what's going to be a 3-part series. I'm going to call it the Paleo Kitchen Essentials, and this is going to be part 1, and it's basically just about the appliances, you know, what's in my kitchen. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I'm also going to film part 2, which is going to be what's in my pantry, which is behind me, and then a part 3, what's going to be in my fridge, which is over there. So this is just part 1 of the 3-part Paleo Essentials kit for you guys. So let's get started. The most essential thing I think that you will need, and I'm casting my eyes around to see what I'm going to pick up first here, is probably the pots and pans. You need them in order to cook conventional foods and you need them in order to cook paleo foods. I mean, if you don't have pots and pans, you're on a raw food diet, I'm afraid. So I have 2 fry pans that are like this. This is my little one, and then I also have a really big one as well. And they're great heavy based ones for sauteing, frying, making omelettes, that sort of thing. Now my pots and pans, I just get the stainless steel ones. I do not like buying Teflon pots and pans because when the Teflon comes off and starts going into your system, it's a carcinogenic. Similarly, with aluminium pots and pans, aluminium has been shown to cause Alzheimer's. So cooking with aluminium will give you Alzheimer's, and cooking with Teflon will give you cancer. Not necessarily, but your risk is increased. Whereas cooking just with stainless steel like this, obviously you have to scrub it more and you don't get that amazing non-stick freaky kind of cheating the laws of man and earth effect. But I just feel like a good honest stainless steel pot or pan is essential for your kitchen. Also, I will add to that and say that cast iron or this kind of thing, I don't know what it's called, where it's kind of got a shiny over the top of the iron, that's cool too. So this is my oven dish, and I use that to make roasts. I'll chuck a chicken in here. I've got a bigger one as well. I'll chuck a chicken in there and some chopped up veggies, olive oil, maybe coconut oil, whatever, herbs and spices, bay leaves, and pop that in the oven. And it's amazing for really quick paleo dinners. This is my pot. I have a larger one as well. This is the smaller one of the 2. And it comes with a steamer that's got holes in the bottom. And so you can steam your vegetables just by filling this with boiling water, putting veggies in here. And obviously it's really great to get pots and pans that are the same size, because then you can use the pot lid for the pan as well, and they'll fit perfectly. So when you're buying a pot and a pan, make sure they have the same millimeter, and then you can reuse the lid twice, which is really awesome. I also have a lot of big bowls like this for salads. Even if it's just for me, I find having a really big salad sometimes hits the spot. And obviously a mixing bowl or 2 won't go astray either. I should do it over here, you can't see it. I have a lot of containers. These are my favourites at the moment with the little wing clips. I keep chicken stock and different kinds of stock in these, and then I only fill them about that far, and then I can freeze them and then use them basically like you would use an ice pack, where you just kind of do this and it'll pop out, or just sit it in a dish of boiling water and it'll melt enough that you can just pour it out, and that's like one use kind of thing. So that's really, really cool. So you don't have to defrost this massive amount of stock and then try and use it all within a week. You can just go by usage, and I have so many of these now. The chopping board is really awesome as well. I always go the wooden ones. I don't like using plastic chopping boards because I worry about when I'm chopping up those little bits of plastic, like where are they going to end up in my food or what? So I generally use a wooden one like this. In order to keep it nice and stop it from drying out and kind of getting a bit chippy and damaged, I generally just get a cloth and put some olive oil onto it and just rub the olive oil over it, and that kind of moisturizes the surface here. Also, don't put boiling hot pots and pans on your wooden fixtures because you will end up with burns all over them. The next thing I have here is a little bit more obscure. It is this, which is a vegetable spiralizer. There are other similar products like spirulis and mandolines, but this is the one that I use. And essentially what happens is, in this section in here, I don't know if you can see, there's a spike in the middle there. So you put a piece of zucchini or a carrot, and then there are some spikes up the top as well. So your piece of zucchini gets trapped in there, and then you just wind this handle around. And at the bottom, there is a blade here, and then, sorry, it's still wet, it's just come out of the dishwasher. And then, I don't know if you can see that, little teeth. And so basically what you get in this bottom container is spaghetti shape. Yeah, angel hair pasta style shape. So this is a really cool tool for making pasta replacement, and I will film a video on how to make zucchini pasta because it's one of my favorites. Zucchini spaghetti bolognese is really, really nice, and it's a great paleo recipe and everyone should know how to do it. Also, one of these. If you don't have a fancy thing like this, one of these is really good because you can just slice up the zucchini like this, and it's kind of like really thick carbonara style pasta pieces. So don't throw out your potato peeler even though you're not having potatoes anymore. Another thing that I find really, really useful is this, and it was originally given to me as a gift, and it's for doing onions. So you put the onion in the chamber underneath here and then just with this kind of 5-bladed knife thing. But I find that I can use it to make cauliflower rice really easily. So basically what you do is you put your piece of cauliflower in here and then just until the cauliflower is turned into tiny little rice granule type size things, and then just shallow fry it. I'll show you this recipe as well at some point because it's really, really awesome. But you can use a food processor instead. I just prefer, I'm going to cut myself. I just prefer this guy because it's just quick and you can do as much as you need, and you can see how much you've got there and whether you need to do more and that sort of thing. And it's a lot easier to clean as well. Baking tray is obviously still an essential because even though you're paleo, you will still be able to bake, and that's something that we're going to get into later. Also, a nice big metal cup for smoothies is an absolute essential. I use those every morning when I have my smoothies. Bowls, even though you're not having cereal or pasta anymore, you will still use these guys for things like soups and stews and curries. So they're still definitely an essential. I also like these little guys, and I think they're for custard normally, but I make all sorts of little paleo desserts in them, and some of them, like I make a really nice kind of chocolate cake, and they will set in the fridge in these, and so I still use them heaps. Obviously regular plates, I'm not even going to bother showing you guys, you know what a plate looks like, I'm hoping. A shallow one of these, so this one goes with my red, same set. But this is for if I'm just doing some veggies. I'll cut up the veggies and put them all in here, and then just pour some oil on top, and then put that under the grill, and I'll grill the veggies really, really quickly, and you kind of get that char grilled vegetable type thing, and that's really easy to do with one of these, which is a food dehydrator. Now this is great for drying food. So for instance, I have a vegetable garden. Whenever I pick any herbs, if I want fresh herbs, obviously I'll hang them up, but if I want dried herbs, I can just process them in this, they will dry, and then I can bottle them up and use them later. Also, this is really great for making roll-ups, like fruit leathers, I suppose you would call them. We call them roll-ups here. And it's also good for doing things like dried apples and even dried grapes if you want to make your own sultanas, that kind of thing. It's really handy for that sort of thing. Again, this is kind of a weird ingredient use thing, but it's it's handy if you've got one, and hopefully I'll be able to do some dehydrator recipes later on. But for now, I really want to focus on recipes that everyone can do and then get into the Paleo Freak recipes later on. The next thing I'm going to show you is a vintage slow cooker. This is it here. Look at that font. Isn't that luscious? I believe this was purchased sometime in the 1970s. My great auntie gave it to me as a gift. And it's really, really great for making stocks. So what I'll do is I'll pour whatever leftover meat bones I have that I've frozen in the freezer, I'll put them in there with some water and a bit of apple cider vinegar, some bay leaves and some onions, and just boil, and carrots even, and just boil it up and let it go all day long, and it makes the most fantastic stocks. And it's really good to cook with stock, and I will do a proper tutorial on how to make different kinds of stock. And hey guys, so now that I've shifted around a little bit, we are near this bench over here. So one of the other most essential things that I have in my kitchen is my milk nut bag. And this is made of a kind of gauzy fabric. I have shown it already in a tutorial, my almond milk tutorial. It has a really kind of gauzy, I don't know, it's kind of like ethereal fabric and it's really easy to clean. So I've started using it instead of conventional cheesecloths and that sort of thing every time I'm making milk from nuts, and it's fantastic to clean. It's so easy to just rinse it out, and it's like all of the gunk and everything that normally gets stuck between all the fibers just slithers out of it. It's kind of creepy. It's great to buy nuts that have still got their shells on, and you need a nutcracker in order to deal with that. A nice robust one with a good thick hinge there is the best thing to buy. I also have this garlic presser, which I use occasionally. I cook with a lot of garlic, and this will save a bit of time. Also, I have these. They're kind of daggy, but they're great for in the oven. They're made of silicone, and it takes a long time for the heat to go through them. Ted and Fred. There you go, I just named them. Don't throw away your cheese grater, even though you're not having cheese anymore, or maybe you're having a little bit of cheese. But don't throw away your cheese grater, because it's great for grating up things like carrots and other kind of tuberous roots for salads. I think that if you cut up a carrot and you cut it quite finely, it's still too bulky for a salad, whereas if you grate it, it just kind of gives you that carrot juice, bit of texture, not too much. Really nice. I like it. Also over here I have my hot water kettle, which I boil water in, obviously. I always fill it with cold water instead of hot. I've heard that if you fill it with hot water, then you kind of get a bit more of the heavy metals in it, and it's better to just fill with cool water and then boil it from there. I also have my blender, which you guys have seen before. It's nothing special, my blender. I don't think it's a particularly amazing blender, so I'm not going to be like, it's this brand, blah, because I think that basically if you're spending over $100, you're basically going to get something just as good as my blender. And it's okay, it's just a blender, whatever. I use it to make smoothies in. You see me use it to make smoothies in, easy. Now coming over to this side of the kitchen, I'm just going to move you right now because we're halfway there already. I have a few interesting things. I have my knife block, which keeps all of my knives nice and sharp. I also have a sharpening piece here, which you can use to keep the knife sharp, and it actually makes a really massive difference. All you have to do is go like that. And I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. Just keep it flat and rub it across like that. And that actually really will sharpen up your knives. And if you do it regularly enough, like before each usage, it makes a massive difference. Another thing you can do is just grab a second knife and use the second knife to sharpen the first one like that. But it's obviously not as effective. But moderately effective, like it's worth doing. I also have a mortar and pestle, a nice big heavy one. The heavier you can get, the better when it comes to mortar and pestle, because you really want to be able to get your back into it without moving this dish too much. And the heavier it is, the harder it is to move the dish. I also have this, which is fairly new, and it's a spice rack, and I've put all of my favourite herbs and spices in it, and I've actually relabeled a lot of them because they had really stupid labels of herbs and spices that I don't use, like chicken salt, and I've just gone ahead and changed them to herbs and spices that I do use. It's awesome, and I have it right next to me, like my stove is just here, so I have it right next to me so it's on hand when I'm cooking. The other thing that's important to have on hand when you're cooking are these guys. Now I have two piles, I guess, of cooking utensils. I have my wooden ones, and I use them the most. things like spatulas. I have a lot of spatulas. And then really narrow ones for getting into corners and that sort of thing. And wooden spoons, fantastic. But then I also have metal ones. And I want to try and change the metal ones over to wooden ones as time goes by. But I don't know how successful I'm going to be with that. That's basically everything inside my kitchen that I consider essential for paleo eating. Obviously, there's other no-brainers like fruit bowls and a stove and an oven and a fridge. And then there are things that I don't have that I guess some people would use, like a microwave, for instance. I don't own a microwave. I moved out from home several years ago and I never bought one, and I kind of never missed one. So I don't have one still. And if you're organized enough about defrosting your meat, I really don't think that you need a microwave at all, actually. So that's basically everything that's in my kitchen that I would consider important. And stick around because part 2 is coming up, and that'll be all about what's in my pantry, and then part 3, what's in my fridge. See you in the next video, guys. Bye. Hey guys, today I wanted to talk a little bit about alcohol and the paleo diet. There is a real split opinion about whether or not you can or should drink alcohol while you're on the paleo diet, whether it's good for you, and if it's going to cause you more harm than it's worth. I personally still consume alcohol, and the entire top shelf of my pantry is full of booze, and I find that it affects me more than what it did before I was on the paleo diet. So before I was on the paleo diet, I would probably, like, a glass and a half's worth. That effect is now happening in 1 glass worth of alcohol, if that makes sense. So I have basically become lightweight, which is fine because it saves me money, but I suppose it's because your body's not really used to dealing with toxins and dealing with like crappy stuff in your system, and so it just kind of goes straight to your head. I'm not exactly sure what the science is behind it, but I've seen on message boards around that I'm definitely not the only one that this has happened to. So definitely, once you're getting into the paleo diet a bit more seriously, it's not a good idea to drink a whole lot of alcohol, or what you would have considered to be a lot of alcohol before you start the paleo diet, because it will be too much for you. In terms of the types of alcohol that are recommended or not recommended on the paleo diet, the opinion really is quite split. Obviously, some people say that you shouldn't be drinking at all, and other people say that it's fine to have a glass of wine every now and then other people, like myself, tend to be even more lax than that. I find that I don't do a lot of cheat meals, so I think that with drinking, it's kind of my cheat meal. That said, I probably don't drink more than once a week. And I definitely don't drink a whole lot because I'm such a lightweight. So I'm probably having less alcohol than the average Australian. I'm definitely having less alcohol than the average Australian, but I still really enjoy it. And it's a great social thing as well, especially in this country. So let's get into it. What I've done today is gotten out everything from my pantry top shelf, which is all of my alcohol, and I've lined it up in front of me. And I'm just going to pick things up and talk about them and what I think is a good idea to drink and what is a bad idea to drink. I definitely think it, and I will start with this because I don't have it in front of me, I definitely think that beer and any kind of mixed drinks with sodas or drinks with a lot of sugar in them are completely off the menu. Those vodka cruiser type mixed drinks where there's a lot of sugar in them are really bad for you, and the sugar is going to do you over worse than the alcohol is once you're kind of getting into the paleo diet and you're not consuming a lot of sugar at all. Similarly, with beer and stuff like that that's fermented from a grain, it's definitely not a good idea to consume it. Beer is made, I think, from barley and hops, and barley is not on the paleo diet, and therefore neither is beer. However, if you are a really big beer drinker and you want something that's kind of a similar alternative, I would recommend cider. There are some types of cider that are really, really sugary, like Strongbow, that I wouldn't recommend at all, but cider that's just made from fresh apples and not condensed down to become sweeter, just like the traditional kind of recipe. It almost tastes a little bit like wine, but apple wine, if that makes sense. And it's fantastic. And I've found that when I drink it, I don't get that kind of sugar high or hangover afterwards. I wouldn't say I don't get any hangovers at all, but it's not from the sugar and the other ingredients in the alcohol. Obviously, the most paleo drink, well, the two most paleo drinks are the ones that are made from berries or obviously from grapes. Now, the alcohol that is made from berries is generally referred to as gin. Gin is traditionally not considered very good for you because it's a drink that the lower classes tended to consume because they had access to it. Gin is made from berries that are fermented and then distilled. So fermented means that they've been put with water or some kind of, or even just crushed up in their own juices and left there for the yeasts to kind of work on them and create sort of what you would consider a really dirty, gross cider. And then that cider is distilled and turned and purified into something like this. I have two types of gin going at the moment, Trader's Dry Gin and Bombay Sapphire. Bombay Sapphire is kind of the traditional fancy pants gin that a lot of wankers tend to drink, and Trader's Dry Gin is a slightly cheaper version of it. But I do drink gin, and I find that if you're going fairly easy on it, obviously, because it's quite strong, same as vodka or any other spirit, it is fine to consume, really. And it is only made from berries, so it is quite paleo. There are other spirits that I keep in the house, and I'll quickly go through them. One of them is schnapps. Now, I'm not exactly sure with schnapps what the deal is. Sometimes schnapps is really, really sugary and really, really sweet. And sometimes, like this one, which is actually from Europe, where they make the schnapps, is not. This is basically a really strong spirit, and the lid of this bottle is actually a little shot glass. But yeah, it smells terrible. And it does smell like peaches, it's a peach flavour. But I'm not exactly sure what the deal is with schnapps. I think schnapps like this, which looks like it's just made from peaches and then distilled down the same way that gin is pretty good. But a lot of the schnapps that you get, especially in Australia, are really sugary, really sweet, kind of like liqueurs almost, and they don't seem to be, I wouldn't recommend those, definitely not. I also have some vodka. This is Chinggis vodka, which comes from Mongolia. It's not available outside of Mongolia, but I got it as a souvenir from a friend that was visiting. And it is amazing. It is organic vodka. The people that make this don't really have access to conventional farming, or if they do, it's quite minimal. And so basically, if you're going to drink vodka, this is probably something like this would be better. But again, if you're going to drink vodka, if you're going to drink a disgusting flavoured spirit, just go with the gin, for God's sakes, because it is just made from berries, whereas this is made from potatoes. And as we know, potatoes are not part of the paleo diet. However, I wonder how many of the toxins from potatoes are still inside the drink once it has been distilled, and this has been double distilled to this level of purity in alcohol. That said, it's only 39% alcohol per volume, so what's in the other 2/3 of the drink? Is it just water? Probably, but who knows. Obviously, my next big thing is wine. I love wine, and I was one of those kids that hated them in childhood and forced myself to drink it until I liked it, and now I like it, so that's pretty great. I have a couple of bottles rather of wine here, and I'm not even sure. I have a Shiraz. In the US they call it Syrah, and a Cabernet Shiraz Merlot blend of wine. I do like the blended wines, and I think that having a variety of grapes in your wine is probably going to give you a variety of antioxidants as well. Red wine is really, really high in antioxidants. It's really good for you, and I think that a glass every evening is definitely not going to break your paleo diet or cause you any undue harm. However, a lot of wines, and including this one, I think, contain a preservative, and they either refer to it as sulfides or as preservative 220, 221, and essentially it is and this one says in the back of it, contains sulfites. And this one probably does as well. Let's have a look. Yep, contains sulfites. So they both contain this preservative, and it's referred to as sulfites or 220 or 221. And essentially what it is it's a preservative, and if you find with drinking wine that you get hiccups, that you get bloated, that you get gassy, that you get migraines after you've been drinking red wine, it's not the red wine that's doing it, it's this preservative, the sulfites, the 220. this sulfite preservative is also in bottles of port and any kind of mix of wine as well. Always look out for it. If you can find chemical-free wine, it doesn't even have to be organic wine. If you can just find it chemical-free, that means that it doesn't have the preservative in it, and it won't give you that headache, and you won't get the burping, and you won't get the hiccups, and you won't get the farting, and you won't get any of that business happening. I definitely get migraines from preservative 220 if I drink too much of it. And it's not fun the next day to have a migraine because you've been drinking wine the night before. So if you can find chemical-free wine, definitely go for that one, because preservative 220, in my opinion, is definitely not a paleo ingredient. I also have some leftover white wine, and I think it contains, let's have a look, contains sulfites. It also contains sulfites. So even with white wine, it's in them as well. Basically, it frustrates me, especially with port, because with port, it's an alcohol that has been designed to keep for a very long time so that sailors could take it out on their long voyages and drink before they got back to port. And which is not where the name came from, actually. It's a Portuguese drink. But anyway, what I find frustrating is that traditionally you were able to take it a long way. And traditionally, like 100, 200 years ago, you could age this stuff for 100 years and it wouldn't go off, there wouldn't be a problem, it wouldn't go rancid. And it just shows that we're so obsessed now with keeping things as fresh and beautiful as possible that we put preservatives in all of our wines. And that frustrates me a lot because they're completely not necessary. And there you go, rant over. In terms of mixes, I tend to mix soda water with my drinks. I obviously don't do a lot of mixed drinking. I prefer to do the wine thing, but obviously tonic water is fine as well. It's just basically soda water with quinine, and so your gin and tonic is still on the menu, and you can pretend to be an old English lady drinking your gin and tonic while on safari in Africa or something. That's just what pops into my head when I think of gin and tonic. But soda water as well, obviously juice, if you're not using too much of it and you're not too worried about the sugar consumption of having fruit juice, is fine to mix with alcohols as well as regular water. Coffee as well, if it's just black coffee, then you can mix that with anything you want. There's a lot of experimenting to be done. Basically just try and avoid really sugary things, because that's what the trap is with alcohol. It's not the fact that you're drinking a substance that's going to get you drunk and give you a headache. It's the fact that you're consuming, in the case of beer, a load of carbohydrates, or in the case of mixed drinks, a lot of sugar. And those are the things you've really got to look out for. So try and stick to low sugar options. And if you're not sure, just read the labels of everything that you look at. You might feel a bit stupid comparing to drinks in the bottle shop, but really, at the end of the day, this is your health that you're concerned about and that you want to maintain. So I really think that it's worth doing, and it's worth being diligent about this sort of thing. So that's basically it in terms of alcohol. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I will try and answer them. See you later. Bye. Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about how not to cheat on your diet and how to stick to eating resolutions that you might have made. I've been on the paleo diet for about 1.5 to 2 years now, and I very rarely cheat on it. I'm really, really good, and it's because of a couple of little tactics that I've picked up along the way, and really not my own willpower that has allowed me to stay strong and eat the healthiest things for my body. So these are basically my guidelines and rules that I would recommend in order to stay on the paleo diet, or to stick to any kind of diet or resolution that you have involving your eating. The first thing is to be realistic. If you are somebody that doesn't stick to goals really well, or who doesn't remember to do things, then don't be too hard on yourself when you forget things, or when you just sort of be yourself and muck up a little bit. I think that people who really struggle to eat breakfast, maybe making the resolution to have breakfast every single day isn't a realistic resolution. It's probably much more realistic to say, okay, I'm going to try and have breakfast 2 days a week, and then scale it up from there. I think that scaling things is really, really important when it comes to being realistic. For instance, when I first went paleo, I did breakfast first, and that was the hardest thing for me because it was always a grain type of meal for breakfast, and changing that to be a non-grain event was really, really difficult. And so that was sort of my first step. And I didn't change my entire diet overnight. I just did breakfast. And then after getting used to that for a little bit, I did lunch and snacks and then dinner. And I found that realistic phasing in of a new way of eating was much more successful, and I was much more successful long term than what I would have been if I'd have been like, okay, today I'm going to be paleo and I'm never going to eat grains again, you know? So definitely be realistic. That said, when you are first starting out, you will be the most enthusiastic about it. So really get into it and seize that. Start organizing yourself, empty out your pantry of all foods that you don't want to be eating, empty out your fridge of all those foods that you don't want to be eating. If it's not in the house, then you can't cheat with it, and that's huge. With my pantry, I've done a video before where I've gone through what's in my pantry, but essentially what I've done is everything that's at eye level is part of my diet, and then the things that are above and below are not. And I find that that's the best I can do, because I have foods in my house that other people eat that aren't paleo or primal. But with me, when I open the pantry, I see the food that I'm supposed to be eating and not the food that I'm not supposed to be eating. Similarly, all of my cheat ingredients in my fridge, I've now organized to be in the fridge door. And then when I open the fridge and look inside it, that's the food that I should really be eating. And that's definitely made a difference. So empty out your pantry and your kitchen of all the food that you shouldn't be eating, and then you can't cheat. And if that's not realistic, then reconfigure your food storage so that the stuff that you see first is the stuff that's part of your diet, and that will definitely help out. So yeah, chuck out all temptation. Obviously, starting new recipes and stocking up your pantry on awesome paleo-friendly food or diet-friendly foods is a really good step for when you're first starting out and you're really enthusiastic. Once you kind of get over it a little bit, if you haven't built that foundation of, you know, really good recipes and really good techniques and food preservation ideas and that sort of thing, then, and you're not already in that habit from the beginning, then it's hard to continue once that first enthusiasm phase peters out. Also, another thing for paleo and primal is definitely just cut out grains and gluten straight away. I found that I cut out grains and gluten pretty much immediately after I'd incorporated paleo eating into, I think, 2 meals. And then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to have any more bread. I'm not going to have any more pasta. And I think that if you cut out gluten really, really early on, when you're in that really keen, enthusiastic phase, then when you get over it a little bit and you're like, oh, I'll have a cheat meal, it's okay, you know, I'll have some bread, you'll feel sick because you're not used to it and because you haven't had it in like 2 or 3 weeks. And that'll keep you on the straight and narrow after that. I find that I can tell if a steak that I have at the pub with gravy on it, I can tell whether there's flour in that gravy now or whether there's gluten in that gravy, because I will feel a little bit queasy after I've eaten it. And that's really cool, because it means that if someone offers me bread, oh, you know, come on, it's only 1 slice, it doesn't make a difference, I'm always going to say no, because I know it's not worth it, because I'm going to feel sick. And I think that cutting out grains and gluten early on will mean that when you're tempted to cheat, your body will actually tell you, no, 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 please don't do this, because I feel horrible now. And yeah, that's huge. Another really good technique to stop you from cheating on your diet is to tell your friends about your diet. Post on Facebook or send a mass SMS out and tell everyone, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to start eating like this, and I'm going to be really good, and blah, blah, blah. And you will find that when you're out with your friends and you're tempted to cheat, they'll be like, you're not supposed to be eating that. I thought you messaged me and told me that you were on this diet now. And that definitely helps. Telling your family members, so that when they see you sneaking to the fridge, they'll be like, I thought you weren't eating that now, is a really, really good way of keeping you on the straight and narrow. And also tell them to tell you not to cheat, so that when it does happen, they can kind of shame you out of it a little bit. I've found that the few times where I've slipped up and had rice or something with Asian food, my family are always like, I thought that rice wasn't on the paleo diet. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I know it's not. And then that means that next time I won't do it. So yeah, it definitely helps to tell your friends. And if you can, try and find someone else that's interested in losing weight or interested in getting fit or interested in the paleo diet, and buddy up with them. And then if they're succeeding and you're not doing as well, then you'll be motivated by them, and vice versa. I find that with me, I didn't get into the paleo diet alone, and the group of us that kind of started all at the same time. Some of us have been successful and some of us haven't, but the ones that haven't are really, really motivated to try and be successful because they see the success of the successful people, if that makes sense. So yeah, getting a buddy that wants the same outcomes as you and doing the diet together is definitely really, really helpful. Another thing is when you're cleaning out your kitchen and getting rid of all of the non-paleo food in your kitchen, chuck out your takeaway menus so that you're not tempted to ring up and order takeaway, and delete anything that's kind of not paleo recipes or paleo menus and that kind of things from your bookmarks online if you do a lot of online ordering. It's also really good to sign up to things like the veggie boxes from food co-ops, so that you're actually being delivered vegetables every week and you basically being forced to eat them because you're receiving so many of them. It means that if you were tempted to not have vegetables and you're like, oh, but I have this celery now, oh, but I have this, you know, you have to eat those things. And so at least you're getting that minimum nutrition level. And even if paleo doesn't ultimately work out for you, at least you're eating more vegetables than you would have been, and you will be healthier as a result. Another thing that I do is I eat quality food. I try and get nice vegetables, I try and get really tasty cuts of meat, and so that I'm just really excited about eating. I find that if you have the same old crap in your fridge week after week and you don't mix up your menu at all, then you'll get a little bit bored. Whereas if you have, you know, new and exciting things, lychees maybe one day, or fresh cherries another week, or it's exciting and you're like, oh, I haven't had a mango in 4 months, I'm really excited about having this mango. And eating seasonally as well, just to vary up the ingredients that you're having, is definitely really, really important in order to stick to the diet, because otherwise you will get bored, and being bored is not very good, and you will be forced to cheat and have noodles or something terrible instead. Organize your meals and plan what you're going to eat, especially when you're starting out. I find that when I was starting out rather, I found that if I hadn't kind of thought about what I was going to eat, I was like, God, what will I eat? What will I eat for dinner tonight? And look in the fridge and there'd kind of be nothing there because I hadn't been organized enough. I think that keeping your fridge stocked up with veggies and fruit and lots of different paleo options is really, really important, because that means that if you haven't organized yourself, at least there's something there for you to cook. But it's even better if you can organize your meals beforehand and have them sort of running order. Okay, I'm going to have this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner. And then because you've planned it out and you've got all the ingredients there, you're not going to cheat and be like, oh, fuck it, I'll just have some pumpkins. That's basically the best advice I can give you. Obviously, keep up your willpower and put motivational pictures up in your kitchen, on the fridge if you're tempted to snack, and just really remember why you're doing this and what you want, and you'll be able to go really, really far. I've found that with the paleo diet, it's a realistic diet where you won't be tempted to cheat because there are so many options of things that you can eat at any time. And that's really key, just realistic. That's the massivest thing that I can recommend, is just be realistic about your goals and about what you think you can achieve. And remember, it's you know what you're like. If you know that you're going to cheat doing a certain thing or with a certain ingredient, then make sure that that option is taken away from you. That's the easiest and the best way of doing it. Good luck, guys. Bye.